Carly Simon finally confirms who You're So Vain is about. A little bit about the girl. Richard L. Simon, one of the founders of the publishing company Simon & Schuster, was Carly Simon's father. She and her siblings had a special childhood thanks to the company's success. She spent her childhood alternating between the family's Greenwich Village home and their second residence in Stamford, Connecticut. While residing at the Stamford house, the family frequently had famous visitors around them. Simon got a taste of celebrity before she became a singer. So, second-hand celebrity, she was acquainted with the time's elites, including Albert Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Charles Adams. Her favorite celebrity to hang out with was a specific Los Angeles Dodgers baseball star. A Dodgers mascot. The family was close friends with Jackie Robinson, the Dodgers star who broke baseball's color barrier. The Simons even let the Robinsons stay with them while their home was being built. Simon attended several games at Ebbets Field, even sitting in the dugout on shortstop Pee Wee Reese's knee. Simon was even given a Dodgers jacket and became their unofficial mascot. Jackie even taught me to bat lefty, she later recounted, though it never took, she said. He always had the cutest look around the side of his mouth, as if he were thinking about what he was about to say before he said it. Behind the smile. The Simons were wealthy, but their home was not all glitz and luxury. But like many other seemingly flawless families, not all was as it seemed. The residence was apparently loaded with covert sexual assault assignments. The singer described how her sexual experiences started when she was just 7 years old. Unfortunately, she's still attempting to recuperate. Simon also said in her biography that she had a terrible connection with her father, who often vented his rage on his children. Her mother, on the other hand, was too preoccupied with her romance with a much younger guy. As if things couldn't get much worse, her father was fired from the firm he started and died when she was young. Following that, the family's money vanished. Spending her inheritance on therapy. It's no wonder that Simon is still attempting to get her bearings. She had a mental breakdown after seeing her lover in France. She began attending psychoanalysis 5 days a week to begin her recovery journey. Unfortunately, the costly treatment sessions depleted her small inheritance. Looking back, I assume he must have caught a whiff of that pungent, sour aroma of future bounce checks, the scent of a patient on the verge of exhausting her funds, Simon wrote, of Dr. F informing her she was done. This was a difficult moment for her, but her professional achievement helped to alleviate her financial difficulties. Bob Dylan tried to recruit her. The day before her 21st birthday in 1966, she received a phone call from the one and only Bob Dylan. He was calling to persuade her to join Gross Court, the same management that was in charge of him. He thought she would record Baby, Let Me Follow You Down, and even wrote part of the lyrics for her. When Simon and Dylan first met, he raved about Nashville, where he had just returned after recording Blonde on Blonde. Surprisingly, Simon seemed unconcerned about impressing Dylan. Thank God he was stoned, she said, which meant I didn't have to worry too much about making a good impression. Bob Dylan actually rewrote the song. Dylan eventually rewrote Baby, Let Me Follow You Down for her. Simon attempted to record it with Albert Grossman, an unknown producer whose identity might have been readily ascertained with a little digging. Anyway, the session was a disaster. The producer kept lowering the melody for her. The producer was well aware of what he was doing, and Simon felt as though she was being sabotaged. She didn't hold back in expressing her theory in her book. She feels the incident was payback for me not responding to their sexual advances. She also said that she couldn't verify it. This occurred before the Me Too movement. Drugs, not hugs. Simon and Taylor seem to have a lovely marriage with 2 children. Unfortunately, the poisonous connection alternated between bliss and anguish. It was rife with adultery, arrogance, and drug use. This clearly put a strain on their marriage, particularly the drug use. Taylor once attempted to stop heroin by shooting up in front of his wife. Simon remembered the terrifying moment when Taylor took the drug in front of her. Chemistry was in the making, and somehow all the components made their way into a syringe, and as he pulled the rubber tight on his arm, the veins became purple and frightening. Her first, biggest exposure. As previously stated, Cat Stevens is one of our suspects in You're So Vain. She flew him out to California in April 1971 when she opened for him at the Troubadour for 5 nights. This chance gave her the first vacation to Los Angeles, as well as a memorable experience and her first significant exposure. The singer experienced what it was like to be famous. She encountered Chris Christopherson, another candidate, when checking into the Hyatt. Simon walked inside her dressing room after her first performance, where she met James Taylor and Joni Mitchell. That seems like an excellent way to begin a musical career. She blew her therapist's mind. When she went to visit her therapist, she startled him by telling him she'd spent the night with Warren Beatty. Not who she slept with, but the fact that she was the second person that day to inform him they had spent the previous night with Beatty completely blew the therapist's mind. "I wasted little time telling Warren," she writes in her autobiography. "I had a feeling he'd have something to say or contradict. He howled on the phone. I'm sure he was mentally accumulating figures and looking over data, maybe even pulling out his calculator or calendar. Could he have made a mistake? Could this truly have happened?" The charming Warren Beatty. Simon and Beatty's romance was well known, especially considering she said he was one of the 3 males featured in her blockbuster song. Despite knowing he was a player, she succumbed to his approaches and found him fascinating and appealing. His method of seduction, taking a piece of paper and writing down the main loves of his life. Simon was pleased to see her name beside Catherine the Great and Marie Curie. Surprisingly, Beatty made a point of calling the following day after they'd spent the night together. He remembered my mother's, sisters, brothers, grandmothers, old boyfriends, and the streets where I lived 5 years ago. He was seldom, if ever, confused because of his extraordinary memory. The Warren Beatty drama. He had a knack for keeping track of his women. He did, however, make a mistake. On a Saturday night, after midnight, he went to see Simon and told him he had just flown in from Los Angeles. Warren seemed to have just created a brand new manual on how to make love, she said. Not too brazen, not too missionary, but not too many tricks either. Carly went to visit her therapist the following morning, not the one she spent her fortune on. We discussed how the therapist had heard everything from someone else. He genuinely told her, "You are not the first patient of the day who spent the night with Warren Beatty last night. It seems that the 2 ladies he was sleeping with were in treatment." Meeting James Taylor. Simon's friendship with Taylor is central to her life and her biography, Boys in Trees. She said they briefly met as children on Martha's Vineyard. They were married for a decade when they were adults. She described how she and Taylor first met in her dressing room in 1971. He was barefoot, long-legged, and long-footed, with his knees bent. He was dressed in dark red corduroys with a wide waist and a long-sleeved Henley with one button open, his right hand gripping a self-rolled cigarette. His hair was both shining and tousled, falling equally on both sides of his head, and he had a scruffy, understated mustache, the kind that was popular in the early 1970s. Clever name for a pond. He seemed both kempt and unkempt, she said. Everything about him signaled that he was, in fact, the center of something, the core of an apple, the focus of attention. Taylor departed with Joni Mitchell, his girlfriend at the time, after their meeting. Simon must have felt something since she recalls their encounter so well. It doesn't seem like she was the one who sensed the power. Taylor and Simon began dating later that year. According to reports, the pair spent a lot of time on his vineyard property. Taylor loved to plant willow trees at a natural pond at the foot of the road, which he named Carly's Bottom. Tension with Mick Jagger. As previously said, Mick Jagger was a main suspect in the Men Around the Song. We stated how Jagger provided these songs backing vocals, but that wasn't the end of their romance. When she first saw the Rolling Stones, the singer acknowledged that she found him sexy. "Naturally, I flirted with Mick," she said. "Who wouldn't, after all? If a lady doesn't flirt with Mick, it might only signify she has a cold sore or has previously been brushed off by him." The singer went on to explain that she sensed electricity between them and that the tension reached a peak when they were recording You're So Vain. Did she cheat on Taylor? Simon didn't end there. "I wanted to touch his neck, and he was looking at my lips," she added. "The energy was raw and unmistakably powerful. Having sex would have really helped to calm things down." The singer never said if she and Jagger had a relationship, but we know his wife, Bianca, had an opinion. Taylor even called him the night before his wedding to advise him not to marry Simon and that she was cheating on him. "I'm sure that's not true," James responded. "Carly informed me about it, and it's not what you think. I have faith in my future bride. I have faith in Carly." Nonetheless, Jagger and Simon's romance lasted for years. He'd even sent flowers to her hotel under a fictitious name. Moving on to Jim Hart. Taylor and he divorced after 11 years and 2 children. Simon later married Jim Hart, with whom she was married for 20 years. What she didn't realize was that Hart was gay. He subsequently revealed that the first time he went to her home, he was spying on her ex, Taylor, and couldn't take his eyes off the attractive singer. Hart finally came out in 2007. Carly awoke one morning and said, "I think you might be gay." She wasn't afraid of it. All she wanted was for him to be honest. In his 2017 book, Lucky Jim, he detailed their turbulent marriage. Simon urged him to write it, regardless of what it revealed. Jack Nicholson fling. Simon and Nicholson had a relationship, as we all know. He was shooting Carnal Knowledge with Bugs, Artie the Garf, and Mike the Nick, as he affectionately referred to them. Nicholson stayed at Carly Simon's New York residence for a few nights. Nicholson came up with his sexy pickup line after she poured him coffee on their first night together. We talked for a few minutes, and then he casually asked, "Do you ever drink coffee in your bedroom?" I suppose you didn't have to put up much of an effort back then. As we all know, their brief relationship ended when Nicholson developed affection for another lady with whom he was sleeping. A recent relationship. Simon and Taylor had 2 children together before their bitter divorce, Sally and Ben. Given that they're both vocalists, I assume they have strong genes. In a 2004 interview, the singer said they no longer speak. I would say our relationship is non-existent. It's not how I wanted it. Simon began dating a physician named Richard Kohler in 2008. He's 10 years younger, and according to sources, they started dating in 2006. The pair was apparently living together on Martha's Vineyard in 2015. Clouds in my coffee. Another well-known phrase from You're So Vain is "clouds in my coffee." With so much intrigue surrounding the song, Carly decided to disclose what this phrase really means. According to the singer, the phrase comes from an airplane flight that I took with Billy Mermit, who was my friend and piano player at the time. As I got my coffee, there were clouds outside the window of the airplane, and you could see the reflection in the cup of coffee, she added. Billy said to me, "Look at the clouds in your coffee." That's one mystery out of the way.